Hey everyone, my name is Swathi Kalyani. I am a geospatial research analyst with the Takshashila Institution, and I did some PG in geospatial technology, remote sensing, specializing in water resources basically. And currently, I'm extremely interested in looking at satellite images to understand or probably help people understand and visualize any geopolitical scenarios and changes that happens across the world. So the topic that I basically selected is to give an understanding of what geospatial data is, what geospatial tech is, how it's currently pictured in the Indian sectors, in the Indian domain itself, and probably a few challenges and ask you for a few solutions. And one of the reasons that I like to talk about is because whenever we tell, right, or somebody asks me what do I do, and I'll be like, do geospatial research, and they're like, what's that? And I'll be like, satellite images, and do you know maps? So I kind of work around that, and they're like, but do you make it or do you visualize it? What do you do? So the easiest example I go for is, do you know Google Maps, and do you know the different layers that is there? So I kind of work around that, making those things or things like that. So to start with, this is how our Google Maps looks, right? And if you look at it, it has like water bodies represented in some polygonal shapes. There are so many point datas which tell you where is your taza tendi for breakfast or something else wherever you want to go to. So basically, this particular visualization comes with overlaying multiple layers of data. When you need to create a certain layer of map with all these different polygons, different polylines which you can see for the roads, and different points for all these features which are there, which is done basically in GIS platforms, which we'll discuss later. And when you overlay those three layers is what you get, basically a particular open street maps which tells you where to go, what exists, and where to how to find to go to there. And if you remember, there will be an option called layers in the Google Maps, and you just have to click on it and it converts to the satellite image. What it does is, so basically Google takes the data. If you have ever read this bottom line, it tells where it takes the data from, what is the date when it was captured, and then it visualizes that, overlaying again the point files which were there, right? And if you want, you can add more features to it. And there is this particular arrows, all of them which kind of comes in our theory structures, where it's like, what does a north arrow represent, what is probably the plus and minus zooming, all those signs. And within that, more features exist. For example, you can actually measure a distance. If you get in the Google Maps itself, map point A, point B, and it tell you what is the distance between that. Multiple layers exist. As I told, one of the layers is also the terrain layer, which actually, if you have the elevation data of a region, it actually maps out how the area in probably a 3D view looks like. Now, coming to geospatial data, right? It's simple. It's any information which would have the coordinates given to it. Any digital or ground survey data which has some geographical information to it was basically geospatial data. But over time, we have also modernized how maps and geospatial information is visualized. So more than just coordinates, if it represents what the area looks like, we kind of still consider it as a data that can be used. And the portals are basically where you kind of access these data, you can download it, or you can just analyze within the portals itself. Many of them look like mere visualization data. For example, Google Maps is more of a visualization thing and less of a processing thing. But Google itself has so many other platforms that we can look out later. And the applications are extremely huge, and most of the discussions around geospatial tech mostly happens in the environmental domain in general. Like, it's mostly like to understand if temperature is increasing, glaciers are melting, river is drying, or all that. But it is much more than that. If you remember the pandemic times, there were like these disease maps which would come out telling which was a red zone in that. All of these are due to the geospatial tech which exists, integrating that basic point location data into a map format. If you look at nowadays, state and local government, most of the schemes, one which comes to the top of my mind is the PM Gati Shakti. In its policy document itself, where it outrightly said that it's going to be using geospatial layers, data, and disseminating all that, which surely enhances transparency, accountability, things like that. The progress of it, all that is another topic to talk about, but the importance that is being given to it is quite commendable. And there was a Gram Panchayat initiative called PM Swamitwa, which was about digitizing land records and things like that. Again, a core geospatial tech based initiative which was there. Telecom, water, energy utilities, transportation has multiple utilities with respect to this. Just finding a good location for a particular industry, a particular home, a particular service sector facility itself can be, really enabled with this kind of data if it is there. Coming to talk about maps, right? So this is basically a topo sheet. I don't know if everybody has seen that, but yeah. So great. So this is made by Survey of India when it comes to the Indian territory, and they kind of do it regularly. The latest version that we have is of 2019, and it holds a lot of data. So they do a lot of ground surveys, satellite images, all that, and then they create a particular imagery of that, how that area would look like. They try to integrate roads, transport, electricity lines, water, houses, temples, even things like if there's a single big banyan tree, there used to be a point feature for all that. And it also includes multiple information, what we would call essentially the metadata of a map itself exists. Like, for example, the legend tells what each feature would represent, because every color has its own conventional things that it's given to, and the scale, for example, and what is freely available, at least for the public currently, is something 1:50,000 open series maps. Beyond that, you need registrations and permissions and things like that. And of course, if it's border sensitive areas, then it comes kind of under the defense ministry, not really under the Survey of India. So that's another complex route. So if you're kind of making a map, you would try to incorporate a few of these things, which surely at many times when I'm seeing articles today, right, it's more because there is that artistic element given to it. We kind of forget the basic elements, for example, the scale or the north arrow and all that. But because we used to lose marks for this in our exams, I thought it was important to show that. And yeah, this is the interesting thing nowadays, right? So any incident happens, it's great to have a satellite image of it, because it's the best way to understand that and surely reduces a lot of cost than going to the original place. And this is how, if you normally download a satellite image, which kind of works in the optical images. So to bring out our little physics terms or whatever, the electromagnetic radiations which exist, right? Every satellite has its own types of sensors, and it kind of captures the images in its own kind of wavelengths and radiations and things like that. So whenever it's within the visible rays, of course the cloud also gets captured within that. And if you can see, there's also the cloud shadows, which kind of is visible in the satellite image itself. This was taken from the Sentinel satellite, which gives a good resolution and is free. You just need an email ID registration to actually visualize all that. As soon as you process the image, which can be done when you change the bands, right? For example, if, as I said, most of the visible rays might get interact with the clouds, and that would be visible. But there are more radiations which coming up. For example, the microwave sensors, if you take it, or the infrared sensors, they kind of can penetrate the clouds, and then the image becomes clearer or better, which can be better utilized. And now there is also certain GIS platforms which work towards these atmospheric correction itself, which we can look into. And whenever we work with the satellite images, and some images don't really give us the picture of what it actually would be, we try to manipulate how these rays are visualized within the platforms. So what we basically do is, if there are visible rays, if there are near infrared rays or thermal infrared rays, we know how it interacts with certain object, which is probably a leaf, a road, or a building. And we would know the reflectivity of all of these things, the absorption of all of these things. So basically, if they absorb more light or rays, it might look darker. If it reflects, it might be brighter in that sense. So we kind of change that, manipulate it, and bring out a false color image, which is from the red, green, blue format. We kind of go towards something like green, blue, and infrared format. Because in GIS, you know that the leaves which are the vegetation, better response to the infrared radiations which exist. So that is why whatever would be a light greenish would still be much better clear in this false color image. And that's why you do these kind of conversions whenever you have a little bit confusion about certain data, because it's also not every time that you'll have a high resolution 1 meter or 1 centimeter data. You might mostly be working with coarse resolution data. So this is how you play around to get those minute details. Yeah, this is how the infrared looks like. So if there is the water which goes to a greenish bluish shade, because water completely absorbs the infrared radiations, it becomes extremely black. So some spots which might not be visible in this image becomes visible here, which you, and then you can correlate that that is actually a water body which exists. And yeah, these are the different bands which come up, a lot of wavelength data, frequency data, which might not be really useful. One thing is each of these bands, when they capture an image, also their resolution or the area of the capturing the image might also be different. So one of the reasons that the newer satellites with the newer technologies and sensors came up with this panchromatic was they could have a bigger spatial resolution than some other sensors which would be there. So, and one single satellite can have all of these. It's not a big deal. A very good satellite that works with all of these is the Landsat, done the NASA satellite, and it has had its latest versions of Landsat 8, Landsat 9 in recent years, gives quite recent optical images if you really want to use. And with every satellite image, it's extremely important to have this metadata, which would be downloaded with the satellite image itself. It would be a basic text file, but it includes a lot of data. Something as simple as if your pixel was measured in meters or kilometers, or what is the unit of that satellite image itself. If the image was captured, when the image was captured, where was the sun location, so that you can understand what is a shadow and what is actually a black patch, and what are the possible coordinates of the satellite image, so that you can always correlate it with whatever processed output you make out of it. Coming to geographic information systems. So this is the software aspect of this. Remote sensing data or the maps are always the input, and this is the platform where you do all the analysis or processing itself. It's basically a technology which helps you to create geospatial data, manage it, analyze it, and create the maps which you can visualize. So it basically, for example, if the map that I showed here, right? This is available in a PDF format. What you do is you download it, but PDF doesn't have coordinates, right? It's just like a sheet of paper in a digital format. So what you do is you take it into a GIS platform, and you have these coordinates here, if you can see, right? Yeah, these coordinates, right? So GIS enables you to get this map into the platform, give these coordinates to it according to the PDF itself, and then it kind of integrates into the world map which exists there. And then you can, whatever work you do on that map basically becomes a geospatial analysis, because it's no more a random digital data. It is a geo-reference data which has its own coordinates and locations and everything. Yeah. So GIS can store a lot of data. So that is most of, like, if you see, if India says that it has its own GIS portals for smart city missions or PM Gati Shakti, most of them what are they're doing is basically the data management. They hold a lot of data. If you go to Niti Aayog's website, you can download Excel sheets and maps of like all the coal plants which are there, energy plants, because it mostly focuses on that. If you go to some water, Jal Shakti Ministries portal, they have a whole GIS portal with which has all the dams data or projects coming up, projects completed, all that evaluation charts in the map format. Maybe because it's just nicer to have that, and more, it's more easily understandable if you have it in a pictorial format. And yeah, so GIS helps you you can make better decisions if you have the location data of something that you've never visited or it is difficult to visit probably. And it's when you store the data, it also enables you to disseminate it to the relevant stakeholders who can actually use it, and probably give you better outputs, and which would be better useful in those projects. So what it, if for example, whenever we create something like poverty density map, right? When you see like India's, this is high poverty, low poverty, all those gradient maps. What it basically does is take these population data of that region and then average or the state GDP or like GDP per capita layer of that. And these would all be mostly Excel sheets, but if as soon as you give the coordinates to that, it becomes geo-referenced, and then you overlay all of these layers. You kind of run a weighted analysis where you say if this is like 50% of this population is more than poor, give it like a shade red or something like that of sort, and then that's how the map looks to you. Finding the best route, for example, especially if, as I said, the in the terraneous regions, right? If you have to plan a road to construct, probably in Arunachal or Sikkim, every road wouldn't be reachable. So unless, if it's easier if you have a satellite image which tells you what's the slope and elevation of the data, and which we basically call a digital elevation model, which you can actually download for free for all across the globe actually. And once you have that digital elevation model, it becomes much easier to understand if it's a steep slope, or if it's like, gradual slope where a road is still possible, and if it is a steep slope, what you can probably do about it. And yeah, that's how GIS helps there. And I'm sure you would have seen like these flight trackers are now like online. It's free actually. You can track where the flight, which flights are going, and few of them do include like even military flights and ships and things like that. There are multiple portals which are created, but most of them are, of course, for the visualization aspect itself. And yeah, this is something very interesting with the GIS that's possible is, again, when it comes to the uh, policy aspect, right? For example, as you are into this developing initiatives, it is always best to start at the right location than probably try to find or make some other location really suitable for what what it is probably not meant for. And for example, it could be as simple as building a hospital, right? What do you need for a hospital? You need that certain kind of population around you. You need to ensure that there is a certain connectivity to that hospital. You need to ensure that this structure itself has enough resources. For example, if it needs more water, electricity, all of that kind. And it should be stable, of course. This shouldn't be probably located on like a earthquake zone or flood prone zone. So that's where, again, I think GIS really becomes helpful, because when you have these multiple data overlaid on anything, and it helps you visualize all these layers at once and find which location would be suitable for a particular hospital in a particular city or a district. And of course, responding to emergencies, I think Indian Meteorological Department has done actually a good job when it comes to using this remote sensing data to ensure that at least some kind of weather information is there. And I'm saying this in comparison to many other countries across the globe, right? Not many countries have it. Very few, like I think in the top 10 developed countries, and with ISRO's help, India is really able to do that, and it's also able to give that data to other countries which exist, right? If it's Bangladesh, Nepal, all of them kind of rely currently on India when it comes to a simple river data or a high monsoon data, anything that happens. This is the first responder to that. So again, it also works as like a great soft power tool for India. When you have better technologies, you have your neighbors relying on you, then because it is also very cost intensive to have that satellite being sent and have these platforms continuously regularly monitoring these things. So it's always better if you have these better technologies in your hand. Let's talk about a few GIS platforms, and I think something that would be really useful to anybody who's in the tech sphere and wants to explore GIS and do it in the most easiest manner would be the QGIS. It is free. All you need to do is download the app, and because it has kept itself as open source, there is a lot of plugins that the developers themselves can integrate into it. So anytime the software gets low and there is some bugs which kind of hang it, all you need to do is report to the QGIS server itself, and there will be, because the users are the developers for this itself, the kind of development that happens in the GIS sector, this is kind of the first reflecting to all that. So this is how the software basically looks like. This will be the base map which you will have whenever you upload a data to it. It has to go and sit on where its coordinates are, and that coordinates you will set it from the bottom right there, and you can have your layers put in here. You kind of do your analysis. You have your toolbox which gives you uh, a lot of tools. Like it could be simple as cropping a particular India map from the whole world, or it could be as like creating, for example, if there is a road and you want to create a house only like 5 kilometers away from it, all you need to do is click on a tool and be like, give me a buffer around this road for 5 kilometers, and it maps out the area for you. And it's mostly the one step process, and especially with the plugins coming up, it is the calculations and the kind of data that we needed to give is much lesser now. And of course the 3D visualization, which I think has become very interesting nowadays when it comes to visualizing any map or any region right now. Whenever the terrain data is there, it's not just about the aesthetics, it also gives you a realistic view of that geography, and hence better plan anything if you need to go about it. And yeah, so I would really recommend going through the QGIS itself, because they have a lot of projects which, so for example, if I do a project, I can just upload the data that is there. It might not be directly like linked to another project that somebody else would do, but if they need the same database, for example, if it is the California fires, all they need is a California shapefile or the base boundary maps and things like that. They can still download that project because somebody else would have already created those layers. So it kind of cuts down your time and all that work which you would have to create a whole primary database itself. And yeah, again, all of this is free to download and use and all that. And if you want to build any tools and plugins, you can do that. You can integrate it here, give your credits, and again find out if somebody has created the tools. And every time there is a tool or a plugin which is added, for sure you will have your APIs and codes, everything given to that. So anything, if you need to just explore and study, this would be the best platform to go for. Of course, the most famous one currently, or the most predominant market holder when it comes to GIS, is the ISRI, which has its platform called ArcGIS, and that's a licensed version. So most of the companies or the organizations or the research institutes itself, when they have to kind of work around it, they try to use the ArcGIS. Of course, when it's licensed, a lot of other processes it is smoother in that sense. Like the kind of APIs which run behind it is like much faster. If you have to analyze an image, and the processing time kind of is slower. But again, that's a licensed version, so it comes with its own benefits. And even that has its own blogs which brings out what the people are doing. So for example, we create something like story maps in Takshashila. So whenever like if there is an incident which I need to like present in a better way, so rather than just putting it in a word format, I really try to like put some maps or put some coordinates and then have those visualization behind going on. And when I do that, I just publish it into these three story maps. So it's everybody can see it, and there's a lot of data. And I only think that the tech can be better when the input data gets better over time. And that's something where India is kind of missing in the race when it comes to that input data, because every time we try to do these geospatial research and we have to find a certain kind of data, it starts from that Google search. We really don't know which will be the portal, or which will be the website which gives that exact thing. There are many other wonderful platforms created by this is by the European Space Agency itself. And one good thing about ESA is that it has kind of been able to find that missing gap which exists in the platform's sphere and exactly give that output. So this is again a Snap Sentinel application platform, which it is free to download. You can use it. The codes and everything is there in the website itself. And what they focused on is something, this atmospheric correction. So for example, whenever you have an image and these fog mists kind of misinterpret the data, this works the best in with respect to that, even compared to ArcGIS also. So this is the first software anybody would go to whenever they have to remove some atmospheric issues with the data. And it also again works best when you have to do flood hazard analysis, because the kind of sensors and the bandwidth that it works on, the water bodies are much better like visible in its platforms and its analysis itself. Then of course there is ILVIS, which was created by ITC. It I think I used it mostly when it was about 3D analysis and things like that, but it also holds many other mapping. It helps in forest canopy mapping, so individual trees mapping. That is something Ilvis is great at. So India, I tried to search, but I couldn't really come up with any good Indian GIS platforms as such. There are a lot of portals, of course, where you can visualize things, but not really a platform. And ISRI has its own India branch, where it has its own platforms and data sets related to India itself. But I do think that there is a lot of potential, especially with the kind of research that we are getting in. If there could be a platform which has its own, tools which would be useful for our analysis, would be great. But I don't know. I couldn't come up with anything, but yeah. And this was basically a project that I did long ago. But what I was trying to do is something called watershed prioritization. So I was trying to map, if there is a flood in certain region, which particular part of the region should be protected first, and hence understand all that. So for this, there's again another tools which is specific to water analysis itself. It's called SWAT. So there are many other things which you can search for. So what we kind of do is, if there is a river which passes, we correlate the river flow and the slope and the elevation, and for example, what is the soil erosion condition of that, what is the rainfall, and of that kind of make individual maps first and then overlay them. And I had tried to make a social analysis also, so I tried to integrate that whole physical features with the socio-economic conditions of the region itself, because I don't think social like soil erosion should be the only priority, unless if you have another very populated area, that should be the first priority. So that was the so I kind of tried to map that. And this is how you kind of, the processing in the GIS itself happens basic, and this is something you can create on your own, and also GIS has it already. So we tell what will be the input features that we are putting, and when we say type, it's basically the data type that we would be using. For example, if it is a satellite image, it would be something in a raster format. Raster is something which works with pixels. If it is a vector file or something which looks like a polygon, polyline, all that, it would be something called a shape file. So we will mention that, and we'll say what is the formula that the GIS should take care of, and how should it give me the output, if it should be in this resolution. All that could be manipulated and customized according to you. So yeah, this is how the tools look like. There are a lot of and the number of tools has only grown with time, and it's actually expanding very fast with the Python coming into play. So more than directly using the GIS platforms, it's mostly the ArcPy or PyQGIS that nowadays are being used, which makes the processing actually much faster. Yeah, so the final output of that, overlaying all the layers, would give me that this is the basin one, like this is how the basins are divided. And if it's yellow color, so the river was almost flowing like this, so the lower portion probably got a bigger prioritization compared to the others. And the changes were, while these should have been the higher priority regions, maybe because of the socio-economic factors, there were a shift in positions of all that. And that's something that's possible with probably using this platform. So this is just to tell what is available. And I did not discuss something called Google Earth Engine. As I said, Google does a lot of work by its own. So something more than Google Maps, there's something called Google Earth, which is just, again, you can do like some basic analysis with that Google Earth platform itself, where you can visualize, where you can create polygons, where you can create your own study area and then download it from the website. You can have snapshots, images, all that. You can have transition videos of a region, like the timeline, how a particular place has changed from this year to a certain year. All that is possible. And then it has integrated all this tech into Google Earth Engine, where you have, it is as easy as you have a search bar and you type what you literally want and it gives you the feed. Really works like a Google search engine things, and then takes you, gives you the code exactly which you have to integrate into the engine's browser, and then it gives you the final output. So that's something Google has been doing pretty well, but of course it's so broad that it's also because of the coding thing that exists in there, it's kind of technical for a lot of people to use. And yeah, then you have to also integrate your data with the drive. You have to give your email IDs, all that steps involved with Google, of course. Coming to Indian portals, right? As I said, I couldn't find many GIS platforms, but India does has done a at least a good job when it comes to geoportals and comes to visualization and downloading or dissemination of the satellite data that ISRO collects. So this is the Bhuvan portal, which was created by National Remote Sensing Center, and NRSE is responsible to collect, analyze, disseminate the remote sensing data that is in India, and it's the only responsible person. Like nobody else has the permission or the authority to take care of that. And here you can search for the place, and it will give you a certain legend like what's the administrative boundary, what's the population which was taken into 2011 census, if there is like agricultural land, all those kind of features can be overlaid here. Yeah, this is how it would basically look like. So it has a lot of inner data, whichever is there. Bhuvan doesn't allow you to download most of this data. So if you have to download, you need to close the browser and open another thing called Bhunidhi, which was created again, which was to download data. So here you can possibly tell what is the like ideal date for which you want the satellite data of an Indian territory. Oh, also it is only specific to Indian territory. ISRO's all the satellite images which are given, it's only for the Indian borders, not really beyond that, and probably beyond like towards the Tibet or something. But yeah, and you can tell, you can draw a polygon of the shape that you want, and it will, you can select if you want a free data or a price data, all of that. If it is extremely sensitive, mostly it will ask you much more permissions and registration and things like that, or it will delay by the time you receive the data. And because I don't know why the data is not integrated yet, but still Bhunidhi just created multiple platforms for itself to for multiple purposes. So even if you could visualize in Bhunidhi browse here, they created something else just for visualization again, and then they created something else for planning again, which yeah, it says that it has its own objectives, but you could actually do that all that in Bhunidhi itself. And then it is not really just National Remote Sensing Center which takes care of it, right? As soon as you want a satellite image, of course, this one gives you that. But if you can't really do analysis just with a satellite image of a region, if, for example, you want to do some agricultural monitoring, right? You also need to know what would be the ideal rainfall for that. So to understand what's the ideal rainfall, you'll have to go, yeah, you'll have to go to this website, because this is the only website which will give you the rainfall data of a region for a particular year. And if there are missing data, that's it. Probably you can go to the office of that particular region and asks for like their ground stations. And most of these data, if whenever I've checked through, relates to 2014, 2015. uh, Rainfall is of course a little more updated ones, but a lot of other data surely has a 5-year gap, which you can see there. And then coming to IARS, which is like one of the very few institutions which actually specializes in teaching geospatial tech only, and not as like a complementary subject to geography or environment or all that. So they have something called their air quality monitoring. If you go to their portal, they'll tell you what's the PM 2.5, PM 0.5 concentration again, but you cannot download it. You can only see that and leave it there. And I don't know if, like, I've tried to kind of withdraw it from at least from the backend, but doesn't really work there. Then coming to something else called India Geoportal, which they created again for some meteorological data which was already available there. And then they also have a specific organization, which is actually a very good organization when it comes to marine studies, weather monitoring, all that. But then they also have specific data related to them. So if you want to learn about rainfall, probably go there. But tsunami or cyclone, you have to come back. And then if cyclone induced rainfall, you go back there. This is how the whole system kind of works. But yeah, and then they have again the Mosdag website, which was meant to integrate all the weather data that could possibly happen. But again, this is for visualization. There is another Mosdag website which you have to go for downloading. So it's not the same thing. Yeah. And then when we moved towards this PM Gati Shakti, all the schemes and initiatives which are coming up, one of the main claims that we'll have a GIS portals for each of these states, which I was very happy about because I thought we could download the data, but you can't. So you just go to the website, you see a boundary map, which is basically the boundary map which you could see in Bhuvan, and you can probably just see it for one particular state at one point. And yeah, that's what the portal is about. Coming to the global geospatial portals, just for a comparison, this is the USGS portal, which is of USA, and if you search for the satellite here, it actually gives a few Indian satellites. So whatever is incorporated in the Bhuvan is actually available here. And NASA has its own portal called Earth Data. Again, you get all the global satellites which is there, and the data is interconnected there. Of course, Google Earth Engine also, if you wanted to search. And this works similar to the Bhuvanidhi portal. You probably map the area, give the details, and you can download it again for free. All you need is the login, which requires an email ID, not much of restriction. But if you have to download the Open Series map from Survey of India, you kind of need to give your ID, mobile number, and things like that, which might be done. This is another wonderful portal by NASA, which maintains it. So if you see here, it kind of integrates a huge load of data which you wouldn't have to go to other portals to find out. And this also becomes like a final output, right? For example, if you find the flood map, you can just use that as an output to explain whatever your research is instead of getting into the effort of doing a flood analysis of the region itself. And yeah, so as I said, European Space Agency has actually found its way to find its users in the satellite domain, because as NASA was kind of predominant, USGS was there covering everything that is possible. What Copernicus really was capable of doing is giving these process data itself, where you could find out in the latest date, and also kind of the best resolution available for that latest dates in the out of all the GIS platforms that exist. But it also gives you like the false color composite. You don't really have to give the data to a GIS platform and run the analysis. You just have to click here and it gives you the data as it is. And if you see the color difference, this is the satellite image which was captured for that date. So the satellite goes around the Earth like this. I mean, few of them do go in different directions, but this particular satellite goes around in the vertical direction, and that is the only image that was captured for that particular date. If you give a different date, maybe the image would shift to that other region which exists. Coming to policies, right? I actually wanted to start talking about this, but then I thought I'll keep it to the end. So one good thing which happened in 2022 is actually creating a policy for national geospatial data, and it is quite ambitious. Like, it aims to democratize, liberalize, and ensure that more public-private partnerships happen in the sector. But one thing is that they did have a few milestones which has to be achieved by 2025, and we only have a few months to see if that really happens or not. Before this, there were, of course, rules and regulations, everything with respect to data. The problem is it was mostly considered as just digital data or just some map information which was under something called National Map Policy, which again, Survey of India kind of holds the upper hand there. But as soon as it moves to a border area, it goes to Ministry of Defense. So if it creates kind of a loophole in when it comes to geospatial data access itself. And I understand there would be border security concerns. Of course, there is some defense sensitive areas which you cannot really give it to public at all, right? But there could be a lot of other analysis which is really useful. probably something like the hazard analysis, right? These most of our terraneous regions are quite vulnerable when it comes to all that. So instead of completely depending on NRSC to do every kind of analysis, it's kind of better if the data could be open for all the researchers and they could easily do it and don't not really go through much hurdles when it comes to getting these data itself. And even this includes restrictions when it comes to a certain kind of data. The registration of companies or the organizations which will have to use these tech will have to go through the SOIs, licensing agreement, all that process. Again, one interesting thing is on the in the whole document, the responsibility of ISRO and NRSE is kind of minimal. While I think they kind of have all the input data, should have been more, but it's still overlaying mostly on Survey of India's powers when it comes to the policy itself. And they aim to create something called Operation Dronagiri. I don't know if you guys are aware of. So that was a key thing in the policy, which was about awareness and creating, like, I mean, incorporating this into the educational sphere itself. But kind of this text still runs as a complementary thing compared to the other domains or sectors which exist. Maybe because of the tech aspect, that it's easier to incorporate into a geography or a environmental studies and have it as a separate thing itself. Yeah, a lot of skills and investment gaps. The latest investment which came was last budget. We got, not we, the National Geospatial Mission got 100 crores, which was a big deal. A deeper look shows that it still is mostly divided towards the revenue part of it and less towards the capital part. And interesting fact is the geospatial mission had 100 crore. Something called Mission Mosam, which is for better weather monitoring and analysis, all that has something like 1,200 crores, which in the mandate surely includes using geospatial tech, maps, data sets, everything. And then there is another scheme, of course, as we mentioned, all this PM Gati Shakti, Swamitva, and institutions and DigiPin, all of them have their own funds, which is not really incorporated with this, and there is no way to understand if there is any interlinking, there is any coordination between all of these things. So yeah, probably that would be the question. What can be done to probably improve or ease the kind of access we have when it comes to geospatial information? Just because that it has a lot of potential, at least in the coming years or in the present itself. Yeah. No? Any questions? Anything? Yeah.
In the GIS space, currently, anything that you use, so that you some other person experience, like
GIS platforms that we use. Yeah, so what I said, QGIS, ArcGIS. Oh, also, so we, while we are using these platforms, we kind of understand what is best for what, right? So, for example, if it's like a basic digitization or some kind of processing, QGIS is easiest in that sense. But if I want to do a better overlaying and analysis of multiple layers at once, I would prefer R. But if there is something called land use analysis, for example, I have a region or the satellite image of a region, and I kind of want to understand what each area of it represents, right? So when I have to do this land use classification, I prefer a platform called ELDAS Imagine, which does the land use land classification in the best manner. So it kind of what you basically do is you give sample files to it. Like for example, if there is a satellite image, you clearly can map some water body, right? So you say that, hey, this is surely a water body, and you map it, and you give that sample file to ELDAS. And for example, that would be a clear forested area and clear agricultural area. Give small of those signature files to ELDAS, and it kind of analyzes the whole image itself to whatever region you have mapped it. Then SNAP when it comes to any flood analysis or
India
yes. So
you mentioned the European countries.
no. So it is developed by European Space Agency. Most of the platforms which have been developed are free, especially I'm guessing to get the user base because it's still a developing sector itself. It's getting the attraction which has, and it has to compete with Google Earth Engine. It has to compete with S3, which are like kind of the dominant players there.
So SB and Sentinel, all of these are private players?
Sorry?
Sentinel, Snap, And SC, are these private players?
No.
Or-
So SNAP is by European Space Agency, which is not private. ILRIS was by private because it was developed by ITC, which is actually a research institute. So it still gives you open data, all of that. Sentinel is a satellite launched by European Space Agency. Like so for example, ISRO satellites are something called ResourceSat. There is something called Earth Observation Satellites.
Yes.
Yes, inside all that is launched by ISRO itself. So it's their satellites, and whatever images come out, they have different tech incorporated in it. US has a satellite called Landsat, which gives again observations of that. So,
You tried using any FOSS tool for LUIC?
not really, not until now, because yeah, so I have kind of shifted from LULC. It was like probably when we are doing the research analyst, we are doing that. So currently, not yet. Yeah.
So what kind of work you guys are doing?
So something that currently we are interested in is using the free or whatever available satellite images to map out developments that happen in a region. So we're kind of interested in like the geopolitical relations that happens across like India, China, or India, Bangladesh, or other countries which have some interest in India. So we kind of, if there are any future developments which could be possible, for example, if there was a flood in Pakistan, like the Indus River thing. So mapping out how or what kind of variations in these Indus can have cross-border impacts or impacts within India. If there is a dam being built, if there is a semiconductor industry which has to come up in India, what could be the best ways to go about it? So aid the policy in a more scientific, empirical manner is what we kind of look at.
But is this more like a research that you are doing, or like you're working for some client?
Oh, so no. So we don't work with any client. We are an independent think tank, and we are just interested in the geopolitics and we do a bunch of research. So, for example, we don't just focus on geospatial tech; is only a part of that. There are my teammates who work in high-tech geopolitics, which they try to understand how technology affects geopolitics. They try to understand how Indo-Pacific countries influence policies across India and things like that. So it's only interest-based research that is being done, and we kind of have the freedom to do that. Anything else? Yeah, sure.
So I have a question related to threats. Right? So how does the feasibility look like for monitoring real-time threats, especially the challenges like clouds blocking at least the visible spectrum of the satellite images? So is that actually possible? At least with process with satellite images or something like that, or is it an approximation?
Okay, so weather monitoring is always approximation. If you have seen your newspapers or whatever weather data you get, it's like for the next 5 days there will be rain or
No,
it
like
will
the
be
current threats, like real-time monitoring of the current threats.
So yeah, so the real-time monitoring depends that if a satellite has gone above it, right? Like if you want to have the real-time flood data, you need to have a satellite going over it, or you need to have that ground river monitoring stations which we have, which kind of measure like how much of like the depth of the river has increased and things like that. If that exists at that critical point of time, you will have the data for that moment, right? But if the satellite did not pass through it, you will have to kind of wait for the next day to analyze the impact. One thing which you can do is Copernicus, right? What it does give the latest amount of data. So, for example, if you want to do real time monitoring, and I'm giving an example, look into Punjab floods right now, which has happened at least in the last month. They have data at least once in a week. So almost every week you will have a satellite image which has gone through that particular place, right? What you can do is probably, do you see this option? So you click on this and it helps you create a time lapse. So it finds you all the satellite images in that particular 3 or 4 weeks to understand how the flood would have changed. And when you picturize that image itself, you can see that the width of the river has increased, or basically the color of the water changes. So when it is a low, normally flowing water, right, it has a different blue color. But when it is huge amount of volume of water which is flowing, that can be done. But yeah, if you have to do a real-time monitoring, one thing would be you need to know where to get these data, right? So as I said, if it is a river data, you have to go to a certain portal. If it is a satellite image, you have to go to a certain portal, get that, and yes, you can of course do that. I think whenever a flood happens, NRSC does bring out some kind of image analysis saying that if you can see the water volume and the width of the river has increased, and that does happen. So that's possible and not really a cost intense thing. It's something we usually do. Yeah.
What sources does Google use in this satellite view?
Okay. So can you see here? This, oh, you can't, right? Okay, cool. So it says that it uses a Landsat satellite images when it's required. It uses Copernicus satellite images which is required. It also uses Max because this is a huge area, right? One satellite image might not be able to capture all of that. So when you zoom in the Google Earth itself, and I recommend you do it, it's very interesting. You can just zoom in and some areas might have very good resolution. Move towards another area, it might have a coarse resolution because it's a different satellite image and it's captured on a certain date and yeah, probably a whole different satellite also. So currently, because this whole area, it has used three different sources for getting that image. And Maxar here is a private organization, by the way. It has its own satellite images, extremely good resolution. So even if there are like security concerns, more than the government or the government organization run satellites is the Maxar which provides the satellite images. And I think you would have, if you had followed the news during Operation Sindhu, that was the highlight of Maxar and Planet Labs coming into picture. Ki, we have found the area of impact. So extremely competitive to organizations which are currently running and extremely good resolution. Uh, of course, but it's commercial and you have to kind of purchase that thing. Yeah.
In government portals like Bhuvan, what license does it allow to download? So can it be used to like have satellite view for open statements?
Yeah, so Bhuvan, India does allow a few of the satellites to be freely downloaded. So
What license does it have? Is it pre-distributable?
yeah, it is distributable. So the whole purpose of creating an organization called NRSE was to ensure that the satellite image is distributable to you. So it is that organization which cares about. You don't need to have a license to access the open data which is there. If it is a price data, it will ask you for certain kind of registration. If it is a certain kind of area which has some sensitive information, probably it will not allow you to have the data. So, yes, that's it. Thank you. Thank you so much.